Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of BizBlend, where business meets strategy meets soulful storytelling. I'm your host Sana, and today we are diving deep into a topic that every business leader, entrepreneur, and sales professional needs to master: the power of asking high-impact questions, and how that one skill can be the difference between a maybe and a confident, game-changing yes. And joining me is someone who doesn't just teach this, he has lived it. Listeners, meet Phil Whitebloom. He's a sales expert, best-selling author, and the founder of Been There Consulting Services. Over his 40-year career, Phil has closed over, hear it, $1.5 billion in sales, built powerhouse sales teams for Fortune 100 companies, and served in senior leadership roles at giants like Sony Electronics. Well, he is not just known for closing deals, but also for helping others close with confidence. So, we'll be talking about the power of asking the right questions, the art of overcoming objections, and we'll also highlight Phil's incredible book, Handling Objections: Clues for Closing the Sale, which is a must read for anyone serious about taking their sales game to the next level. So, whether you are a founder, an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or a seasoned sales leader, or just starting with sales, you are going to want to learn in for this one. So, Phil, welcome to the show, and it is an extreme honor having you with us.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that you invited me to join you and your listeners today.
Lovely. That is really, really great, Phil. So, um, you mentioned that, you talk about asking high impact questions, which is one of the most overlooked tools in sales. What exactly makes the questions high impact, and how can we start crafting better ones?
So, Santa, you're asking about the importance of this. Let me ask you a question, Santa. So, why do you believe that this topic of asking high impact questions is important to your listeners, and what are you hoping for them to gain?
So I'm hoping to get, for our listeners to get the right information, the right insights for them. So that's my end goal: the right information, which can struck chord with them
Great. And how do you believe that will help them?
when I ask you good questions.
There you go. So, you see what just happened here? It's I could have just answered your question, or I could have just told you something, right? But maybe that wouldn't have been what you were really looking to hear from me, because your thought process was there. So, instead of me making an assumption or a
Mhm.
guess at what you really were asking, I didn't just say, "Why is that important?" I asked you to explain a little bit more how this will help and why that's important. And so that was a high impact question. That was
Mhm.
definitely different than, "Hey, Santa, are high impact questions important to you? And do you think they're important to your leader and to your listeners?" And you would say, "Yes." But what did that tell us? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
So you couldn't even go any further in this interview with me today if that was how our conversation was going. If you weren't asking me high impact questions, all I could say is yes and no, and nobody would learn a thing. Um,
That's
and it would probably be a bad experience for you and for me personally, right? So high impact questions, they're not a joke and they're not a trick in any way. It's always about being curious. So this is how I'm answering your question now. When
Mhm.
you want to make a difference, and whether it's in business or in any other area where you interface with people and you want to eventually get them to come around to work with you, or follow your way of thinking, or maybe you're going to learn something from their answers to your high impact questions that's going to make you change your mind and make you a better person and or provide a better solution to somebody else than you were thinking about yourself. That's the ultimate value of this, asking high impact questions. How did I do with that?
Wow, that was brilliant, Phil. That was brilliant. Without answering the question, you just answered the question. And I also think, that uh, to ask a high impact question, you would definitely need that confidence and clarity within you. So, what's your opinion on that? How can
It's a fantastic observation, and I have to tell you, I have my own podcast that I do with Brianna Henley, and we recorded that just before I'm here with you and your listeners, and this is the topic that we covered today, which is the confidence. So that was very very interesting. So confidence. So there's confidence in yourself, and sometimes people like to come across as confident and they're not, and then they get themselves in a position where they're talking about things that they're maybe either not qualified to talk about or they don't have enough information to, and they're trying to speak with confidence about that. But really, what's happening is you're not fooling the person that's you're talking to, either consciously or subconsciously, where they're going, well, he or she's saying that, but I'm not really convinced. There's something they don't seem confident about what that is. So here's another area where asking questions will help you with your confidence, because usually the lack of confidence is a result of not having enough information or not having enough experience in a particular area that somebody's asking you to talk about or to give advice about. So the way that happens, so if it's something you're so sure about, you definitely want to make sure you're addressing the right question. Assuming here we are addressing the right question, then you want to say, I need to learn more. Could you please share with me a little bit more about what you're asking so I could make sure that I'm responding to you with the correct information? So, Sam, how did I do in answering that question for you?
you? I mean, you actually, first of all, you were very frank that okay, if something, let's say for a salesperson also, if he or she is not aware about the product or service, not connecting, not understanding the actual value which that product or service is providing, there is no way that person can, communicate with clarity and confidence, or maybe handle the objections or rebuttals coming from the leads or the customers. So I can totally connect with this particular scenario because I have personally faced that.
Great. Thank you. I'm happy I could help.
Okay. And when I mention about objections and rebuttals, now I'll bring your book as well, which is Handling Objections. It breaks down this psychology of resistance in a beautiful way. Um, okay, so sometimes, if I take some excerpts from my journey in sales, sometimes I've really struggled to handle objections coming from customers. Maybe they're asking that, okay, I have this product, why exactly? What kind of value your product is giving to me? I mean, it looks just normal to me. What difference it will make in my work or in my business? So I've really struggled with that. So what's one objection, according to you, Phil, that is consistently misunderstood, and how can we reframe it?
So, what's misunderstood? So, what's really misunderstood is if there's a misunderstanding, the misunderstanding is the responsibility for that is on the person doing the selling, not on the buyer.
Okay.
And because the it's all about the buyer. You have to understand what's going on. So let's just take that value statement that you just made, Sana, and because that could become an objection. I don't see the value.
Mhm.
So how many times have you seen an advertisement or talk with somebody and they are telling you the value of their product? Well, if you want to talk about arrogance
Mhm.
and you say, boy, you guys are really arrogant. You are telling me how this is going to be valuable to me. How do you know what's valuable to me? How do you know? Have you asked me a question? So you want me to be blunt? I'm going to be blunt and direct here. Is that that's just when you're talking at somebody,
Mhm.
they really don't appreciate it And you have to earn the right to be able to talk at somebody or to somebody where they already respect you at a very great level, because then they're going to be listening intently because you've earned that respect. Respect isn't something you could buy, and it doesn't happen immediately. It happens from having positive experiences. And so let's go take this as an objection. And, the value, I don't see the value. That's the objection
Mhm.
from there. So, how would you handle that? The first thing you do is you have to acknowledge it. I say, I understand that I either haven't demonstrated to you how our product here or service is going to be valuable to you, and that's on me. Could you share a little bit more with me, please, on relative to what we're talking about here? What would make it valuable to you? So what I've done here is I've acknowledged the objection without saying it just directly back to them word for word, because that just aggravates people. And I've put it into some kind of context, and then I've taken responsibility for it. So I'm not fighting with them. It's not coming across as defensive. And I'm acknowledging, please share with me how this would be valuable to you. What would make it valuable to you? So the rest of the name of my book here the title is Handling Objections. The subtitle is Clues for Closing the Sale. So the title tells you what the book is about, and the subtitle is the promise. So the reason I bring this up at this point is because when they object to something, it's usually important enough that they will probably end up making a decision, maybe solely on that objection point, because they raised as an objection. And if it was a real objection, it's important to them, or it's going to be a major factor in what you're going to be closing on. So will you be closing on the product or the price? No, you're going to be closing on that answer to them on what's valuable to them. So that's the first part, is you acknowledge it, and then you ask them a question. Share with me, please, what would make this valuable to you? And then they're gonna explain that to you because you're curious, and now you're no and by the way, am I talking about myself at all at any of this? I haven't said a word about myself or my product or anything else. It's all about them, and they're sharing with me this. And they say, "Oh, I understand now. The value to you is gonna be if it's gonna free up 1 hour or more of your time, allowing you to do these things that you can't get done otherwise. Otherwise, you're not interested." Is that what I'm hearing? Yes, it is. Wow. And what are you willing to do with that other time? So I'm still with them. With that other time, I have to launch this new department that is not doing as well as it should be. And I have to make sure that we keep growing this thing, and I have to focus that attention there. So great. So it's not about really the product, what the product is going to do for you. It's by freeing up that time that this is what we're going to do for you, is we're going to help you focus in this other area. Is that what you want? Yes, it is. So if we were to move forward with this and you see the value in that area, how do you feel about that? And they're going to say, that's great. So what I've just done is I've presented that I understand it. And then they've acknowledged, yes, if you show me the value for that, we can continue to move forward. So I didn't ask them for the order. I used a trial close to see if that'll happen. Then I will show them, based on what they said and how our product works, that how it will free up that hour, because now it's not about how the product works, it's about how it will free up that hour. And then when they get that done, I'll ask them another trial close. And when they acknowledge that, we'll move on and maybe even get an order right there without even having to ask for it. Because you could do another trial close. If you were to do this, would you want to start tomorrow, or would you want to get it, next week? What would work best for you? And if they answer that question, you may be able to close right there. If they say, no, not yet, you say, well, there's obviously something else. May I ask what that is? All this from that one simple objection, Santa, about, I don't see the value.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. It's like turning adversity into an opportunity.
Right.
And
Yeah.
an interesting aspect of your book is you cover, uh, as a reader, I learn the difference between a question and an objection. What's that about, Phil? I, personally, I would love to learn that. I'm very sure our listeners would as well.
Yeah. So people have to be careful. And this is true in everyday life, right? Somebody may ask a question just because they curious about the answer to the question, and people sometimes respond to that in such a way that they thought it was an objection. They felt challenged by the question. And so you have to be careful not to turn a question into a problem that was not a problem before. It was just simply saying it was just simply a question. And let's see if I could come up with an example for you. You're in a selling situation and somebody could say something about, oh, I see that you have it here in blue, but does it come in yellow?
Mhm.
And you can say, you can get over it. No, well, it comes in blue. Let me tell you why it comes in blue. It comes in blue because this is the most common thing that people respond to, and studies have shown that blue is the best color for this type of product. Da 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 da. And really, all that person was asking is, "Can I get it in yellow?" They don't really care whether it's blue or yellow. But now you've just opened up this whole thing, and you've made them think about, "Well, is there
Yeah.
a problem here or something else like that?" And instead of just saying, asking the question, and say, first, that's a question you could answer directly, and let's say the answer is no. You say, "It does not come in yellow, um, but I am curious as to why did you ask if it comes in yellow?" So don't make any assumptions, and don't say, "Did you have to have it in yellow?" Because what are you gonna say if they say yes? Say, "Why, why did you ask that?" If you waited and said right away, "It doesn't come in yellow," say, "Well, may I ask why you're asking?" You're just frustrating them. That's a binary question. Just answer the question, then ask the follow-on question. It's like, "I just wanna know." So when you've done it the other way and you've done it the correct way, they say, "Oh, thank you for that information. I was just asking if it came in yellow. Yellow's my favorite color, but it really doesn't matter for what we're talking about here." You say, "Great," and then you move on, right? But if you do it the wrong way, you've just made a whole big scene and a whole big thing out of something that was not a problem or an issue at all. So understanding the difference, whether something's a question or an objection, is important. If we were to take it one step further and switch it around, and you took their objection as just simply a question and said, "Hey," they ask a question, "By the way, does it come in yellow?" And you say no, and then you move on. And it was an objection because yellow was really important because the whole color scheme of where this was going to be installed, blue doesn't fit. It has to be yellow. It's a part of an interior decorator type of place, and you just answered no and moved on and didn't recognize that there was an objection there, and then you can't figure out why you didn't get the order when the time comes. Or you've gone through your whole presentation, then you ask for the order and they say no, and you say, "Why not?" "Well, you don't have it in yellow." Well, if you would have found that out an hour
Mhm.
ago, and you would say, "Well, I can't do anything about that. If it has to be yellow, it's not a good fit," because not every person you're talking to is truly a prospect for what you have, especially if it doesn't fit what you need. And if yellow was mandatory and you don't have it, thank them for their time. If you know where they could go get something like that in yellow, direct them to it, and they'll always be grateful for you for that, and remember that, and move on. So that's the other side. If they're asking a question and it's really an objection and you didn't recognize it as an objection, then it's a miss. So that was a long answer to a short question, Santa. How do you differentiate between a question and an objection, and why is it important? That's my answer.
Wow. 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 So many things to learn. But Phil, also, um, in the sales culture, and you emphasize on this, direct tactical strategies to get faster results. But I'm just putting a contradictory perspective here. Some modern sales philosophies would lean more into a long-term nurturing and relationship building, as kind of a slow burn, a gradual closing process. And we usually kind of assume this in high-ticket sales process. So how do we balance urgency with trust building?
Oh, fantastic question. It's fantastic because you're right. It comes up a lot in discussions, but in practical use, it defines itself in such a way that sense of urgency, we could do an entire podcast interview, Santa, on just sense of urgency. And sense of urgency and understanding the sense of urgency is the differentiator to is really the answer to your question. So the size and the complexity of a particular sale or a particular opportunity is not does not define what's going to make a long-term relationship. It really is responding to knowing the sense of urgency related to this. And sense of urgency and response may mean, yes, it may take a year to get this taken care of, but jumping on this right now and having a solution in the next 24 hours may be the most credible thing that you could accomplish, because there's a terrible situation in place. The technology or the medicine or whatever it is may not exist today, but having a plan in place to tell to the people is critical, and the sense of urgency is there. So you could develop that long-term relationship, or or the same kind of quality that we're talking about in a relationship almost immediately, by being responsive and understanding what the issue is and what it means to the person you're talking to. So when I brand myself as tactical, I do that intentionally, because the people that I work with, they have situations now. They need to improve their sales now. If you want to get into a longer term thing, take a training class. I encourage everybody to take training, and training will teach you how to go from one end to the other. But it's ignorant of what is going on immediately. And in an immediately thing, we have to make our number this quarter, or we're going to have to start laying off people. That's a problem. So I help people to get immediate results, but that's not being naive to the long-term strategic value. But by helping them now, then we can help them build for the future in a more strategic way. And by helping them tactically now, which just the other day, I had a client that was speaking with me, and he had just lost the sale. And he let the guy get out of the room without making the sale and say, "Well, we could talk again later on." And we all know that none of that was going to happen. And I had learned what was going on from asking a bunch of high impact questions of my client. And I told him to do this. And I said, "You need to call him. We're going to hang up the phone. You need to call him back immediately. Tell him this, and this." And within 1 hour, I'm not kidding you, within 1 hour, my client texted me back and he said, "Phil, it went great." He said he actually engaged me with something for next month, and for the following month, he's got some events he wants me to run for him. So that was from losing a sale to getting 2 sales within 1 hour of me talking to him, and that was all tactical. And you think this person would have gone with him if he didn't believe in him, and he didn't have confidence in him, and didn't already have a relationship that was positive enough for him to trust him after he already told him no once, and now he's got the order 1 hour later. That's the power of being tactical with a longer term view and strategic, but don't ever let anybody say the only way you could develop a strong relationship is by being methodical over a long period of time.
That really justifies this. Well, I'm really curious to know what was that which turned around the entire situation within 1 hour.
So it
Oh,
goes. Yeah, great. I'm glad you asked. And I say that because it goes back to what you were talking about earlier on, which is value.
okay.
What the person did not do is, the person was not talking about the value to this individual, and the reason was that this person needed to get in front of all these other people. And my client is somebody who works in the event world. His business is he does events for other people. Well, if the person's not working with him, how's that client, his prospect, going to get in front of all these people? The reason he wants to get in front of all these people is because he wants to grow his sales. And the only way he's going to grow his sales is to get more people. And the only way he's going to get more people is to get in front of more people. And by him not moving forward with him, so what my client was missing talking. He was closing on managing the event and not closing on the value of doing the events. So when he called him back, the guidance was, remind him of why they're having this conversation. He said, "How long do you want to wait to start making more money for yourself? How long do you want to wait before you want to get more clients? You want to wait 6 months? We'll wait 6 months. That means next year sometime you may get some new clients. Or we could do this next week and you could start getting new clients right away. Which is better for you?" And that's what he did. And the guy realized that, and he hired him.
That was definitely a high impact question.
Yep. I had to work,
Oh,
and it was sincere, no tricks, no, no magic, no nothing. It was just be real. The one thing is that people appreciate when you're confident, going back to your confidence, um, conversation and questions, is when you're confident in what you're doing because you are the expert and you're looked at as the expert. And nothing frustrates a potential customer more or an existing customer when they're trying to get help from you and you come back to them and say, well, what do you want? Well, if they knew what they wanted, they would have already done it, right? They're counting on you for that. So that's just frustrating.
yeah. Wow. And when you mention about um, coming in front of more people, if I take this from a perspective of a founder, um, many of the founders would say that, and it's a common belief that I'm not a salesperson, but I've always believed or felt that great selling is more about service than being like salesy or persuasive. So what myths about sales success do you find yourself busting more often, Phil? And how do you help people shift that mindset?
Yeah. Great. So, by the way, the next book that I'm writing is covering this
Yeah.
topic. um, so the that is such a common saying, and it's said to me all the time. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be this.
Mhm.
That is the result of talking at people. So stop talking and start listening more. But the only way you could listen more and listen better is by asking those high impact questions. So let me give you an example. I was coaching a company in the healthcare industry,
Okay.
and they have competition. And so they have to, for families who need healthcare for their aging parents or relatives. This was the business of this healthcare industry. And I'm working with the sales team that was hired by the CEO. And we were going through a role play where I was actually put myself in their position. And when we were done after about 30 some minutes of this role play, one of the salespeople said, Phil, I don't think I could be that salesy. And I asked them, what, tell me please, what part of what we happened here did you find salesy? What did I say to you that made it sound salesy? And that was a real question for me to them. And the room was quiet. And she said, well, I don't know. I said, what part bothered you? She goes, well, I don't really know. I said, what did I tell you? She goes, you didn't really tell me anything. No, because for 30 minutes I asked questions, and the questions were all drilling down and getting more to what the needs were for them as a potential client and understanding that. And by having all those questions, I just kept leading them down the path to, oh, so this is why this is important for your dad. This is what, this is the kind of service he needs, and this is what he likes, and this is what's going to be important for you to when you make a decision. Did I hear that correctly? And when we got right down to this and it came down to this and we talked about it, I said, here's what you wanted to do. Here's how it'll be accomplished. And I asked you what you think about this. I didn't tell you anything except show you what you wanted to do. There was no talk about how long we've been in business because it wasn't important to you. There was no talk about all this other stuff and how great our people are because you didn't really ask that question. We were focused on your dad. And then they realized that, yes, I didn't say anything to them. I just asked them high impact questions all the way along. They already brought in. So the way that I further demonstrated to them that this is the way to do it and it works. And by the way, I didn't have to ask for the order when I got that contract with that particular company because they asked me what we have to do to get started. So I went to the CEO of the company right during this meeting and I said, please tell everybody about my background. And he couldn't do it. And I said, well, then why did you hire me? And then he went and said, well, you asked these questions and you showed us then how you were going to help us with these things and everything else. I said, well, was anything else important to you? Obviously not, because you're paying me thousands of dollars to be here right now. And
Mhm.
So I was showing them, even getting them as my client, it wasn't about me talking about my stuff. In fact, Santa, you did more talking about my background, which was just a minute um, at the introduction. But have I talked to you about why I'm qualified to do this? Why I'm qualified to be on your podcast? Have Just because I have a book, that's not good enough. Lots of people have books, right? Or whatever else. No, because I'm focused on you and I'm focused on your listeners and the people who follow you, because you have to deliver a quality product to them and have takeaways that will help them. And I hopefully am giving them and giving all of you takeaways that will help you. And when you do this and you do this way, it's no longer about being salesy. Has anything that please, if it has, tell me, please, what have I said to you today in promotion of anything that would make it salesy? And now let me ask you, Santa, if you were looking or to recommend a sales coach to your listeners or anybody you know, would you consider recommending me?
That's an obvious answer. I
Right.
would
And so then I would ask, well, why is that? And you'll tell me a lot of nice things that you truly believe, and I will thank you very much for that. But I didn't tell you anything, right? I just asked you questions the whole time.
because personally as a host, but since I'm as a person, I also take interest in this. I have learned a lot of takeaways from this conversation, and that's why there will be a callback in my mind when some listener or maybe someone asks me about that you have a good sales coach in your mind. Then I'll directly have that callback in my mind. Oh, I had a brilliant conversation with Phil a long time back, so let me just get back to you and share his details with you.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, I want to say something nice for you and for the people who listen to you and the people who may be listening to this for the first time. So I appear on many podcasts and I really enjoy this and I always appreciate the opportunities. But what makes a podcast as a guest, what makes a podcast better than on a different podcast is the quality of the host. And that doesn't mean about the host being nice or not. Most everybody is nice. What it means is, how are the questions that they ask the guest, in this case, me? If they don't ask me good questions, it's difficult to give good answers and to engage in that way. So what makes a podcast really work and makes it go on and on and on is the quality of the questions that come from the host. And I really appreciate your questions because you see how it opened me up
Yeah.
and got me going in this area.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words.
My pleasure.
Definitely. Lovely, lovely. So before we wrap up, Phil, if our listeners would like to get in touch with you and get a hold of your book, how they can do that?
Okay. So thank you for that opportunity. Also, if you want to get a hold of me, there's the best way to remember is just go to my website, been there, BENTHERECS. That's in consulting services. So beentherecs.com. And you could go right to the contact page and my book's there. You could see it there. You could learn how to order it there, or you could just go to Amazon.com and you could order my book directly from there. It is called Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale.
Great. I'll have all the details and links in the show notes. And Phil, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for sharing your wisdom and absolutely those, some of the priceless aha moments, especially that turnaround in that 1 hour. That was definitely an aha moment for me. And I guess not guess, but I'm 100% confident it's going to stick with our listeners as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You have a great rest of the day. And to everybody else, I wish you all a great day also.
So, listeners, if you are tuning in and thinking, I need more of this, just go grab Phil's book, Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale. It is practical, it is powerful, and it will change the way you show up in every sales conversation. I guess you got a glimpse from this kind of podcast itself. So, until next time, stay curious, stay bold, ask the right questions, and remember the question you ask might just be the key that opens the next big door for you.